Constitution was not the first attempt to govern the new nation. The Articles of Confederation, ratified in 1781, established a firm league of friendship among sovereign states. However, it created an incredibly weak national government. There was only a unicameral Congress, one house, no national executive branch to enforce laws, and no national judiciary to resolve disputes. Crucially, Congress lacked the power to tax directly or regulate commerce effectively. It relied on the states for funds, which were often not forthcoming. This led to significant problems: the inability of the country to pay its war debts, trade disputes between the states, and events like Shays' Rebellion, which was an uprising of indebted farmers in the state of Massachusetts, which highlighted the governance impotence. The failures of the Articles of Confederation convinced many leaders that a stronger national framework was essential. This led to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, where delegates were charged with updating or refreshing the Articles of Confederation. They went much further. The delegates faced the immense challenge of designing a new government that was more powerful but still protective of liberty and state autonomy. Key disagreements arose between large and small states over representation and between northern and southern states over the issue of slavery. These conflicts were resolved through crucial compromises: the Great Compromise and the Three-Fifths Compromise. The Great Compromise is the Connecticut Compromise that addressed the representation dispute. It created a bicameral legislature with two chambers or two houses. The House of Representatives would have representation based on state population, which pleased the large states, which had larger populations, with members elected directly by the people, the voice of the people. The Senate would have equal representation for all states, two senators each, pleasing the small states, and senators were originally chosen by the states or the state legislatures. The Three-Fifths Compromise dealt with the contentious issue of how to count enslaved peoples for the purposes of representation in the House and for taxation. Southern states wanted slaves counted fully for representative purposes to boost their political power, but not for taxation. Northern states wanted the opposite. Compromise counted each enslaved person as three-fifths of a person for both purposes. This morally fraught deal temporarily papered over the conflict, securing Southern support for the Constitution, but embedding a central hypocrisy within a nation founded on the principle of liberty. These compromises, while imperfect and deeply problematic in some cases, were necessary to achieve agreement and move towards ratification of a new Constitution. The drafting of the Constitution was only half the battle. It then needed to be ratified by the states. This sparked a fierce debate between two factions that rose in response. The Federalists supported the new Constitution. They were led by figures like James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. They argued that the proposed new government was strong enough to be effective, but sufficiently limited by principles like the separation of powers, checks and balances, and federalism that would protect liberty. They famously defended the new Constitution in a series of essays called the Federalist Papers. The Anti-Federalists rose as opponents of the new Constitution and defenders of the Articles of Confederation. They included prominent Americans like Patrick Henry and George Mason. They feared the new central government that the Constitution would build would become too powerful if it wasn't already too powerful in the writing, potentially overwhelming state governments then or in the future and trampling upon individual liberties and rights. They criticized the lack of a specific Bill of Rights to guarantee fundamental freedoms under this new government. The Anti-Federalists' persistent demands for explicit protections for individual liberties proved influential. To secure ratification of the new Constitution, the Federalists promised to add a Bill of Rights immediately after the new government was established and the Constitution was ratified. The promise was kept, and the first 10 amendments, 12 were proposed, were ratified in 1791, a few years later. Bill of Rights enshrines core civil liberties that we all know and love, acting as direct constraints on government power. Key examples include amendments you would recognize. The First Amendment, which protects freedoms of religion through the establishment of free exercise clauses, speech, press, assembly, the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The Second Amendment, which protects the right to keep and bear firearms, weapons. The Fourth Amendment, which protects you from unreasonable searches and seizures by the police, agents of the government, etc. Fifth and Sixth Amendments, which guarantee rights for those accused of crimes, including due process of law, protection against self-incrimination, the right to counsel, and the right to a jury trial. And for instance, the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. These first 10 amendments were crucial in addressing the anti-federalist fears and solidifying the protection of individual liberty against potential government overreach under this new Constitution. But the Bill of Rights was just the beginning. The Constitution itself provides a mechanism for change through the amendments process outlined in Article 5 of the Constitution, which requires proposal by 2/3 of a vote in Congress or a convention called by 2/3 of the many states, and then ratification by 3/4 of the state legislatures or state conventions. This difficult process ensures that changes are made deliberately and reflect broad consensus, allowing the Constitution to adapt over time. Thousands of constitutional amendments have been proposed. Only 27 have made it into the Constitution, and only 17 after the original Bill of Rights was ratified. Beyond the Bill of Rights, several major amendments have dramatically reshaped American society and government and the Constitution itself. The Reconstruction Amendments, which include the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, were ratified after the Civil War. These abolished slavery. The 13th Amendment defined citizenship, guaranteed due process and equal protection under the law to all persons. That's the 14th Amendment. And prohibited denying the right to vote based on race. That's the 15th Amendment. The 14th Amendment in particular has been profoundly significant to the United States, serving as the basis for applying most Bill of Rights protections to the states through an idea called selective incorporation and underpinning much of modern civil rights case law. The Progressive Era Amendments, number 16 through 19. These authorized a federal income tax, the 16th Amendment, controversial. Established a direct election of senators, 17th Amendment, controversial. Prohibited alcohol, the 18th, very controversial. Later repealed by the 21st Amendment to the Constitution. And granted women's suffrage, the 19th Amendment, controversial at the time. Later amendments explore expanded voting rights, abolish poll taxes, lower the voting age to 18, address presidential succession, term limits, concepts like that. Each amendment reflects a response to societal changes, political movements, or crises, demonstrating the Constitution's capacity for evolution while upholding its core principles. The ongoing debate over interpretation and the potential for future amendments shows that the Constitution remains a sort of living document, depending how you define it, central to the continuing American experiment in self-government.